What's up, 412 MPYA? Look, I can listen to those two talk to each other forever. That was their first time on stage together. Give it up for Diego and Tosh. Those guys are awesome. Y'all need to start your own YouTube channel or something. Those dudes are, listen, I don't know what I say sometimes, all right? But if I haven't met you before, my name is Jimmy. I get the great honor and privilege of being the guy who gets to not only talk about Jesus every week, but to lead the ministry. To be called the young adult pastor on Tuesdays, to be called the youth pastor on Wednesdays, to call the next gen pastor on Sundays. And I have the best church in the world because you are the church, and this is the best church in the world. Amen? And y'all, this is cool. We had this idea a few weeks back. We're like, let's kind of combine everything. Let's kind of live out what we preach, because we say because of Jesus, we are family. And so there are sixth graders in this room. Sixth graders, anybody? Anybody in sixth grade in here? All right. All the way up into their 20s. Anybody in your 20s in here? Anybody in your 20s? It's pretty cool. And you'd be like, man, what do I have in common with a sixth grader? A sixth grader's like, what do I have in common with somebody in their 20s? I'll tell you what you got in common. His name's Jesus, and he saved us, and he's brought us together. And that's what tonight is all about. And what we get to celebrate tonight. Tonight's going to feel different. It already does. That was their first time hosting on stage together. This is our first time holding a service together with P-Way in 412, together having one service at the building. And so it's going to feel a little bit different, but even beyond that, it's going to feel different because tonight is the beginning of a celebration that's going to last all week. And God wants us to celebrate. All throughout, before Jesus was born and lived in the Old Testament, the first half of your Bible, God set up some festivals, some times to celebrate. There was this thing called the Passover, and they would celebrate the salvation and the rescue of God from Egyptian slavery. This is the people of God and into their freedom. And every year they would pause and they would celebrate Passover. They would remember God's salvation and his rescue, and they would kind of come around. The older people generation, they would tell the younger generation, and they would celebrate, they would dance, they would eat good. It was just really, really cool thing. They also had this thing where they were in the wilderness for 40 years, and they had this thing called the Festival of Tents, where God told them once a year for 7 days, go camping, live in a tent. When you live in that tent, tell stories of my provision. Tell stories of when we were in the wilderness, how every morning I provided food for you. Every day I led you to the promised land. I fulfilled my promise. And tell every year, come together, it's called the Festival of Tents, and celebrate what God has done. And now, that was a few thousand years ago, but now since Jesus was born and lived and died and was buried in the grave and then came back to life, we now get to celebrate what's called Easter. We get to celebrate this holy week where we celebrate the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And we get to come around, we get to pause, we get to push pause on everything, and we say, we have our agendas, but God wants us to pause, and he wants to celebrate Jesus' death on a cross, to celebrate Jesus coming back to life. And tonight it was going to feel a little bit different of a celebration than what Sunday is going to feel like. Because Sunday is all about the resurrection. Jesus came back to life. Spoiler alert, that's the end of the story. We're going to talk about Jesus dying tonight, but 3 days later, he conquered death, hell, and the grave and came back to life. And that's the good news. But to properly celebrate Easter, we've got to pause and spend time on the crucifixion, what's commonly known as the Passion of the Christ. And I want to kind of just come out right now and just say, this is kind of the point of tonight. The point of this is I want you to know that Jesus really did die. This isn't mythology. This isn't a fairy tale. This is history. This is reality. And there isn't a single person on this planet who's of the right mind, right? But there's not a single historian or legit historian on this planet that doesn't even debate the reality of the death of Jesus. So everything I'm talking about tonight is fact, right? I was going to say fictional, but it's nonfiction, right? It's nonfiction, it's fact. This is historical truth, the death of Jesus Christ. Jesus really did die. But the question is why? I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to say this all throughout the night. Jesus really did die. Well, let's get into this. I'm going to kind of walk through a piece of scriptural history. And, normally I do a good effort to try to keep you engaged by, saying some jokes or just kind of being goofy and funny. But we're talking about God dying. So it's going to feel a little bit different tonight. And I believe in you. I believe that we can spend the next 25, 30 minutes and say, I'm going to push pause on everything, and I'm going to remember the death of Jesus. Y'all with me on this tonight? It's Good Wednesday. Why is it good that someone would die? Let's get into it. Let's pray. God, thank you for your joy. That church can be a place where we are full of your joy. God, it's in your presence that you actually say that there is fullness of joy. So God, thank you for that. God, as we push pause for a second and we remember something that's deep and difficult, God, it would change us. God, I pray for every word that is spoken, that it's not just an empty word, but it's, backed up by the power of your Spirit. God, that it reaches our hearts tonight. God, change me. As I speak it, change me. God, as it's received, change them. God, together we want to change. If you love Jesus, amen? All right, 2 Corinthians 5:14. We are ruled by Christ's love for us. Christ died. He died for all so that those who would live would not continue to live for themselves. He died for them. He was raised from the dead so that. When you hear so that, that's the why. Why? So that they would live for him. So Jesus died. He really did die. Why did he die? He died so that they would live for him. Let me say this simply. Let me put this simply. If you're taking taking notes in your journal, write this down. This is the whole point of tonight. This is the main point. Jesus died so that you could live. This is the main point. Throw that on the screen for me. Jesus died so that you could live. That's the main point. This is it. This is everything I'm saying tonight. I'm going to go, it's 2018, so we have opportunity to, have technology to kind of recreate what it looked like for Jesus to die. And we will watch a clip from this movie called The Passion of the Christ. And it's visually disturbing, but it's reality. It's a depiction of how Jesus died. We're going to feel things deeply. We're going to hear things that are strange. But when you hear all this stuff, I want it to come back to that statement. Jesus died so that I could live. Jesus died so that you could live. That's the message. When we're confronted by these truths, just remind yourself, he died so that I could live. Jesus died so that I could live. So let's lay a foundation real quick because I want to make sure we kind of walk through this properly. The verse that we're walking through tonight from 2 Corinthians, it starts by this. So it says, we are ruled by Christ's love for us. We are ruled by Christ's love for us. I've been doing this recently, trying to say, I don't want to assume that you know what the word Christ means. I don't want you to assume that you know what the word ruled means. So let me kind of take out those words and let's kind of dive in to say, okay, what do those mean? So what does Christ mean? Christ just simply means the anointed one. The anointed one is this depiction of a threefold person who is a prophet, a priest, and a king. So when they call him Jesus Christ, they're saying Jesus is a priest, Jesus is a prophet, and Jesus is a king, to call him Christ. A priest is the one who connects man to God. In the Old Testament, there were specific people. They would make sacrifices on behalf of the people, and the priest connected man to God. The priest made sacrifices on behalf of the people. A prophet was the mouthpiece, was the wisdom of God. A prophet was the one who spoke on God's behalf and spoke to the people, and they were the one who were the mouthpiece of God. And a king was the one who set the rule. The king was the one who had the authority. The king was the one who all dominion was underneath his rule and his reign. And so in Jesus, he is our priest. He is our prophet, and he is our king. That's why we call him the Christ. And so in 2 Corinthians 5:14, when it says we are ruled by Christ's love for us, we are saying that Jesus is our prophet, priest, and king. He's our Messiah. He's the anointed one. He is God. God is 3 in 1. It makes sense that he would be prophet, priest, and king 3 in 1. Just kind of cool how that works. So we're saying this is God in the flesh as our prophet, priest, and king. That's what Christ means, right? So there you go. You know that word now. Now let's look at the word rule. What does rule mean? Now, why am I highlighting this word? Because the first thing that you think of and that I think of when I hear of the word rule is I hear what I can and can't do, right? What are the rules here? Am I allowed to punch my neighbor right now? Am I allowed to stand up and scream wildly right now, right? There are rules for how society works. But to understand a king's rule, let me go back to kind of this concept. This word rule means the thing that holds everything together. So to rule something is to hold things together so that something is maintained in good order. Another way to say this, so that's in the Theological Dictionary based on the Greek word rule. Let's go to the English dictionary just to kind of see what that looks like. English dictionary says it just means to exercise ultimate power or authority over an area and its people. So for a king to have a rule, it's the culture. It's the way you act. It's the things you do. It's the language you speak. It's the citizenship. It's everything. It's the rule. It's what holds everything together. And so, 2 Corinthians 5:14 says, 2 Corinthians 5:14 says, it is that we are ruled by Christ's love for us. When we're ruled by Christ's love, we're basically saying it is our God's love for us. It is the prophet, priest, and king. His name is Jesus. He is the Messiah. That is our God. He is our king. And the way that he rules us, the rules that he has for us, the authority he has for us, the culture, the citizenship, the language, everything is love. Everything is love. Love holds it all together. So Jesus rules us by loving us. He has authority, he has power. He could come down and he could tell you what to do, but he's chosen to love you instead. He has ultimate sovereignty, as we've been reading in PYA. We've been reading in Knowledge of the Holy about God's sovereignty. We've been reading about how God doesn't need you, but he wants to be in a relationship with you. He could come down and in his sovereignty, he could make you love him, but that's not the rule of our king. The rule of our king is that he chooses to show you that he loves you so that you would respond in loving him in return. Everything is held together by God's love. And so, when I say this phrase, Jesus died so that you could live, what I'm saying is, that's the main point. Throw that on the screen for me again, please. When Jesus died so that you could live, what I'm saying is when we look at the cross, he died for you. He had a purpose for you. He has a plan for you. And in his sovereignty and in his infinitude, every single one of you in this room, you are not exempt from this powerful truth. And this promise is that in Jesus, you could have life and life to the full. Because Jesus died so that you could live. And I love this phrase, and it has stuck with me in the hard times when I devalue myself and I'm going through a tough time, or someone speaks negatively about me, or someone gossips about me, or someone does something on the internet that shames me, or that I've made mistakes, and I say, God, do you really love me? And I heard this phrase, you want to know how much I love you? Look to the cross. You want to know how much I love you, son? Look to the cross. I died so that you could live. I purchased you so that you could live. You want to know how much you're loved? Look to the cross. So I want to show you the love of God tonight. I want to show you the depth of the love of God tonight. I want to go into the nitty-gritty of how he died, why he died, what it looked like when he died, because he went through all of this willingly, knowing that he was going to go through it. Why? So that you could live. He went through it as God, knowing every detail in advance, and still chose to die. Why? So that you could live. And I hope that as you read this, you remember, Jesus died so that I could live. Amen? Jesus died so that I could live. Check this out, Ephesians chapter 3. Here's my goal for you tonight. That you, being rooted and grounded in love, you may have the strength. Sixth grader, you may have the strength. Junior higher, you may have the strength. PYAer, you may have the strength to comprehend with all of the rest of the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ, to know the love of our prophet, priest, and king, to know the love of our God. Amen? That's our goal tonight, as I believe in you. This is not a normal thing for you to sit through. But you are here tonight. God brought you here tonight, and I want to show you the depth, the breadth, the length, the height of the love of God. And I hope you know that Jesus died for you so that you could live. So why is this important to talk about Jesus' death? Well, we have 4 eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life. Historical records of how Jesus lived, how he was born, what he did, and what he taught. And so we have these historical records called the 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, named after their authors. And the whole story is about Jesus and his disciples. Did you know that roughly 1/3 of these 4 books, these 4 eyewitness accounts, these 4 historical documents, 1/3 of them deal with the death of Jesus Christ? Just by sheer volume, that should speak importance. John, the best friend of Jesus, who labeled himself, "I am the one who Jesus loved." He understood how much God loved him. He dedicated half of his book to talk about the death of Jesus Christ, because we are ruled by Christ's love for us. So he wants us to know the depth and the height and the breadth and the width of how much God went to great lengths to communicate his love for us. So the crucifixion in and of itself, we all know what a cross looks like. But I don't know if we really know what a cross looks like. We may know what a cross looks like, but I don't know if you know what a cross looks like. Because a cross to us is a symbol of hope, but in this day, a cross was a symbol of execution. Did you even know that the word excruciating means from the cross? That's how detailed these Romans had gotten at murdering and torturing and executing somebody. That we formed a word based on this method of execution called excruciating pain, from the cross. That's how painful this death was. And to get into the nitty-gritty and the details of what it means to be executed by crucifixion, you would be nailed to a cross. It would put nails in your wrists or hands or arms, somewhere around that region on either side, and they would put nails in your feet, ankles, leg region, and they would nail you to a cross. And many people think that you would die from maybe blood loss or whatever, but you know how you die when you get nailed to a cross? You suffocate yourself. Because you get so weak that you can't hold yourself up, that you get so slouched that you can't breathe. And you actually die by suffocation. And the Romans had perfected this over hundreds of years. They got it from other people and perfected it, and this is known historically. You actually died by suffocation. You were nailed to a piece of wood. It is so incredible, painful. But even more than that, it's shameful. Because they wouldn't execute you on a cross where nobody could see you. They would execute you on a cross in front of everybody. Many times they would strip you naked, and in your shame, they would make fun of you in some way so that people could walk by, throw things at you, spit on you, mock you. They would crucify you in a public place. It'd be like crucifying somebody right down the middle of our highway that goes right through Beaumont, right along, like right by the mall. They would put them all over the highway right there. Kind of like idea would be like, we're not going to hide this. We want to shame this person. So it's suffocation. It's being nailed to a cross. It's public shame. You know how long it takes for you to die on a cross? Days. It takes days for you to die on a cross. Because depending on how strong you are, you can hold in, and you don't want to, you kind of want to die, but it's hard. You know what I mean? It takes days for you to die on a cross. You know how long it took Jesus to die on a cross? 6 hours. Our God, our King, hung on a cross in shame, nailed in pain, suffocating slowly. He died in 6 hours. You may be like, oh, how did he die in 6 hours? This is supposed to take days. Well, it's because unlike any other crucifixion before him, he was so brutally beaten before he got to that cross, he was so weak that he died that quickly. And so it's not just the cross. And Jesus knew that he was going to walk through all of this. He knew that he was going to get nailed to a cross, but he knew that even before he got to a cross, he would be so badly beaten he couldn't even last on that cross. It started with when he went before the religious Jews, and when he went before them, they literally blindfolded him and beat him in the face. They punched him in the face, and they said, prophesy, tell us who hit you, and they would beat him in the face. Then those same religious people in a religious custom took his beard and took his hair and ripped it off of his body. And he was bleeding from all areas of his body already. Bruised, beaten in the face, beard ripped out, hair ripped out in Jewish custom. And that was just by the Jews. The Jews took him before the Romans, and then the Romans got a hold of him, and the Romans scourged him. A scourge is where you take basically a cat of nine tails with pieces of bone and pieces of glass woven into each one of these nine tails, and they would whip you with it at least 30, or at most 39 times. It would claw into your flesh, and it would rip your flesh off of your back. You'd be tied to a pole, and they would just time after time, they would scourge you. They would whip your back, and Jesus took that. So he was beaten in the face. His beard and hair was ripped out. He's bloody and bruised, and now his entire back is exposed. Then they take him into the side, and the soldiers begin to mock him as king. And they put a purple robe on him, and they think it's funny, and they'll go get a crown of thorns. And they place this crown of thorns on his head, and they get a scepter, this like king's scepter, but it's just a stick. And they start beating him with this stick. He's already been punched in the face, already been ripped his beard out, his hair's been ripped out. He's already been scourged, and they're still making it worse by taking a stick and beating him with a stick. And then they take this crown of thorns, long thorns, per historical in the region, thorns like this long, placed it on his head as a fake crown, took that rod and squished it down into his brain, protruding into his brain. Blood, you know how fast your head bleeds when you get a cut? I can imagine blood just profusely exiting his head. They really say that he was so badly beaten before he made to the cross that he was unrecognizable as a man. We can't gloss over this stuff. He was unrecognizable as a man. That's how badly he was before he even got to the cross. And then they made him carry his cross almost a half mile, somewhere between a third of a mile and a half mile. He had to carry this giant wooden cross in that badly beaten state to the hill called Place of the Skull, where they would publicly murder him, publicly execute him. This is no small thing. This is no, oh, I'm going to die for you and it's not going to be that terrible. He knew what he was getting himself into. He knew that he was going to be this badly tortured, beaten, and murdered. You want to know why he died for you? So that you could live. So that you could live. He thought of you. He thought of me. Thought of my sin, thought of my struggle, thought of my pain, thought of my devaluing of myself, thought of my low self-esteem, and he said, no, I love you, I created you, sin is ravaging you, and I hate sin, but I love you, so I will die so you could live. But this is our God. This is our King. You're telling me a God would die on a cross? This is our Christ. This is our prophet. This is our priest. This is our King. Why is he subjecting himself to this? As I was studying this, the irony of all of this is that he really is who he says he is. Because 3 days later, he resurrects from the grave, proving everyone right, because he even prophesied that he would die publicly and that he would publicly come back to life. Why are you subjecting yourself to this? Why are you allowing them to mock you? And this idea that they were mocking him all along the way, it baffles me. And let me read to you how they mocked him. And I'm just going to go straight through this. In Luke 22, it says, the men who were holding Jesus in custody, they mocked him as they beat him. They blindfolded him, and they kept asking him, prophesy, who's punching you? Which one of us is punching you? Then in Mark 15, it says, the chief priests, they got a hold of Jesus, and they mocked him to one another, saying, he saved others, he can't save himself. At this point, Jesus is hanging on the cross. And they look at him and they say, let Christ come down from that cross that we may see and believe. If you really are the Christ, you will save us and come off that cross. In Mark 15, before he gets to the cross, the soldiers, they lead him away inside the palace, that is the governor's headquarters. And they called together the whole battalion, and they're like, watch this. Let's clothe him in a purple cloak. Let's twist together a crown of thorns, and they placed it on him. Then they began to kneel before him. They began to salute him. Hail, King of the Jews. And they were striking his head with the reed. They were spitting on him. They knelt down in homage before him. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the purple cloak and put his own clothes on him. John 19, it says they took Jesus, and when he went out bearing the cross, they took him to the place called the Skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. And there they crucified him. And with the two others on either side and Jesus between him, Pilate wrote an inscription and put it on the cross. I read, Jesus, King of the Jews. They nailed this above his cross in mockery, saying this guy thinks that he's king. This guy thinks that he's king, and we're going to kill him because he's actually not king. That's what they thought. They nailed him to a cross, and they mocked him as king. As I was studying this, and I'm like reading all of this stuff about how they mocked Jesus, and they mocked him, and what's funny is as Christ, he is what? He is three things. He's prophet, priest, and king, right? They mocked him as a prophet and said, prophesy who's punching you. They mocked him as a priest. And as he's giving up of his life sacrificially, they said, come on, try to save us. They mocked him as a priest, and then they mocked him as a king and said, you aren't a king. You're dying on a cross. And in the most ironic way, the King of Kings, they knelt before him. And I feel bad for those guys who knelt before him in mockery, because one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that he is God and that he is King. I don't know if you've ever tried to keep a secret from somebody, but doesn't it kill you? It's like I try to throw a surprise party for my wife sometimes, and she's like, why are you being shady? And I'm like, trying to throw a surprise party for you. Gosh, you're such an idiot. And I get mad at her. And there's Jesus being crucified, mockingly being called king. And he really was. There's Jesus being crucified, mockingly being called prophet. And he really was the mouthpiece of God. There he is being mocked as a priest. And a priest made sacrifices on behalf of the people with animal sacrifices. And the perfect sacrifice, the sinless, spotless lamb, was sacrificing for them in that moment. You know what he said to them? Forgive them. God, they don't even know. That's how much he loves us. But what's beautiful about this is that he was king. He just wasn't a king that we understand. He was king. Just a king that we don't understand. I'm going to read this exchange between Pilate and Jesus before he was sent off to be crucified. Found in John chapter 18. So Pilate entered his headquarters, and he called Jesus and said to him, are you king of the Jews? And Jesus answered, do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me? Pilate answers, am I a Jew? Your own nation, your own chief priests, they've delivered you over to me. So what have you done? Jesus answered, my kingdom's not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would be fighting, that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is a different kind of kingdom. My kingdom is on a whole nother level. I'm not from around here. My kingdom is not from this world. And Pilate says to him, so you are a king? And Jesus answered, basically saying, you know I am. He says, you say that I am a king, and it's for this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to truth. Everyone who's of the truth listens to my voice. Pilate says to him, what is truth? And after he said this, he went back outside to the Jews and he told them, I find no guilt in this guy, but you have a custom. And I think I got a way out for him. I'm going to release one man for you at the Passover, because we're in the middle of this festival. We're celebrating. I'm going to release a prisoner. So who do you want me to release? You want me to release the King of the Jews? And they cried out, nah, not this man. Give us Barabbas. And Barabbas was a robber. What's interesting about the entire exchange is that Jesus is saying, I am a king. This is a different kind of king. I am a king. It's just a king that doesn't make sense according to this world, to this world that is full of selfishness and sin. I am a king. I'm just a different type of king. I'm a king that's such a different type of king that in the middle of my sacrifice, people just happen to be going free for no reason. For no reason, Barabbas, a robber, gets to go free. For no reason, a thief on the cross gets to enter paradise. Because when you get close to Jesus, for no reason, he gives you grace and you just get set free. You don't deserve it. You don't earn it. You just get it. He's a king not of this world. He's a king of a different kingdom. And when you get close to Jesus, you get set free. It doesn't make sense. You deserve punishment. It doesn't make sense. You deserve justice. And you get met with grace. You get met with peace. You get met with joy. You get met with paradise. He's a different kind of king. He's a different kind of king because earthly kings send people to crosses. They don't die on them. He's a different type of king. Pilate's looking at him. He's like, what is happening? I find no fault in you. I actually kind of believe that you're a king. But kings send people to crosses. They don't die on them. What are you doing? It's a different type of kingdom. I love this Bonhoeffer quote. If you know who Bonhoeffer is, I would just Google Bonhoeffer. This dude's incredible. He says this: a king who dies on the cross must be the king of a rather strange kingdom. Only those who understand the profound paradox of the cross can understand the whole meaning of Jesus' assertion. My kingdom is not of this world. You want to know what the paradox of the cross is? It's Jesus died so that you could live. That's the paradox of the cross. Well, there's death, but there's life. He's a king of a different type of a kingdom. So we've got to respond to this differently than we would to earthly things. We've got to start thinking spiritually. Because Christ died, 2 Corinthians 5:15. Christ died for all, everybody in this room, everybody in this world. Christ died for all, so that those who live would not continue to live for themselves. He died for them and was raised from the dead so that they would live for him. So put simply, not that you could continue living the same way, but living differently. When he dies so that you can live, not so you can just continue and add Jesus to your life, but so that you would die to yourself. You would deny yourself. You would pick up your own cross and you would live for Jesus. You would live for the kingdom. Because our king made a way. Our king was mocked as king. He's a king of a different kingdom. The truth is, and we all know this, we all sin. I sin. I know you sin. We all sin. And the truth is, the penalty of sin is death. The truth is, the penalty of sin is death. But he made a way. He died so that I could live. But we all sin. Do you want to know what God thinks about sin? Look to the cross. You know what he thinks about sin? Look to the cross. This isn't something that he's like, oh, they'll get over it. This isn't something that he's like, oh, that doesn't matter. Oh, you just told a little lie. It's not something that is not a big deal to him. You know what God thinks about sin? He hates it. He hates it so much. He hates how it ravishes you. He hates how there's death and how we have to deal with death. He hates the results of sin. He hates it so much that he climbed up on a cross himself and died in your place so that you could live. And we've got to have that same mindset of sin. We can no longer look at it as, oh, I got a little sin in my life, but I got a lot of Jesus. It's no big deal. You want to know what God thinks about sin? Look to the cross. He went to great lengths to show you what needs to happen to your sin. He takes it very seriously, and we should too. Because at the cross, we see God's justice for sin. At the cross, we see God's love through the forgiveness of sinners. At the cross, we see God's power through the defeat of Satan, hell, death, and the grave. At the cross, we see God's wisdom in his upholding of holiness, yet making a way for sinners. One of my favorite scriptures when it comes to sin, and people ask me, why do you have this key around your neck? Someone asked me this right before service. Because I still deal with sin, right? I'm not perfected. One day I will be perfect in heaven. But until then, I've got to stay close to Jesus, right? One of my favorite verses on sin is this, 2 Timothy 2:12 through 13. This is my favorite verse on sin. If we are faithless, he remains faithful. I love that verse on sin. If we are faithless, he remains faithful. There's this song at Winter Retreat 2 years ago. We sang the song. I preached on this. It's called Come Out of Hiding. There's this line in this song. When I heard it, it was like an explosion of just sorrow. There's a line in the song that says, you saw it all, and you still chose the cross. He saw my faithlessness. He saw that I was going to deny him. He saw that I was going to sin. He saw that I was going to choose myself as God and my selfishness. He saw that I was going to choose sin time and time again. He saw that I was going to say, you know what, God, I know better than you. I'm my own God. You're not. He saw all of that, and he still chose to die for me, because when I am faithless, he is faithful. While I was still in my sin at just the right moment, when I didn't care about him, he cared about me. You want to know how much God loves you? Look to the cross. And when we are faithless, he is faithful. I'm glad that I didn't have to come to the realization of my sin and then have to go to Jesus and be like, hey man, would you mind dying on a cross? No, I got to just have the realization that he already did. That's how much he loved me. And all I have to do is accept this free gift. Amen? Jesus died in our place. He took that penalty of sin upon himself. And when we die to ourselves, we die to our selfishness. It's a different type of kingdom. So he's asking you to die. He says, now that I've died, I want you to die, but not physically. I want you to die spiritually. Die to yourself. Die to having control over your life. Die to your selfishness. Die to keeping yourself the number one, and start living for me and start living for others. Let me show you what this means from Scripture. 2 Timothy 2:12 through 13. This is the whole verse in context. If we have died with him, we also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. That's talking about the future. If we deny him, he's also will deny us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful. Matthew 16, Jesus tells his disciples, if anybody would come after me, deny himself, let him deny himself and take up his cross. Not take up Jesus' cross, because he took the ultimate cross. And he's the king of a different kingdom. He says, take up your spiritual cross. Take up your cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. Basically saying, no, I'm in control. I'm self-centered. I want to do this my own way, God. I want to try to do this without you. You will lose your life. But if you lose your life for Jesus' sake, you will find it. Are you living by design, or are you living by default? Live by design, the way God created you to live, and live for the kingdom. Because what will profit a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeits his soul? We must be like our King. This is a different type of kingdom. It's a different type of kingdom way. We need to pick up our crosses, deny our selfishness, and live for Jesus. Jesus died so that we might live for him. That's the beauty of the cross. That's how much God loves us, and that's the purpose that he has for us. Why did he go to such great lengths? Because he loves you. He has a purpose for you. He's got a design for you to live out. And so pick up your cross every day. Say, you know what? This day's not about me. This day's about you. This day's about your son. I love this Tozer quote. PYA, we're reading through it. David Tozer, Knowledge of the Holy right now. Check out this quote. He says this on a sermon that he preached once. In every Christian's heart, in our heart, it's the last thing I'm going to say, so dial in, really understand this. In every Christian's heart, there's a cross and a throne. And the Christian is on the throne until he puts himself on the cross. If he refuses the cross, he remains on the throne. Leave that up there for a second. Leave it up there. In our hearts, there's a cross and a throne. A throne says, I'm in control. You know what, God? I know that the Christian sexual ethic is a lot more harsh compared to the world's sexual ethic, but God, I'm going to pick up a cross and I'm going to trust you, and I'm not going to live for the world. I'm going to live for the kingdom. I understand that our stance on marriage is much different than everyone else's stance on marriage, but it's in Scripture and it's in truth. So I'm going to pick up my cross because I'm not on my throne, I'm on my cross. I know that the world says that I can go eye for an eye, that when someone hurts me, I hurt them. But the way of Jesus is forgiveness. You know what? So I'm going to pick up my cross. I'm going to get off my throne in my heart, and I'm going to choose to forgive. I know the world says only love those who are going to love you in return. But as we've learned from Kenny Vaughn over the last few days, love does what's best for others without regards for yourself. And I'm going to love because I am loved by Jesus. I'm going to deny myself, pick up my cross, and get off the throne of my own heart. I know it's tough. I know it's difficult. This is no easy thing. That's why he says, die. He doesn't say conveniently do what's best, take the best of me and the best of you. He says, die. Nail your own sin to a cross. He doesn't say, oh, if the church has flashy lights and if we can have the smoke and if we can have a fun atmosphere, then you can follow me. No. He says, he literally says, my burden is light. He literally says, die to your selfish way of living. We live in a culture that is individualistic, and it says you are number one. But our God says this is a different kingdom. He is number one. Love God and love others. It's a die to yourself. And I promise you, Jesus died. Why? So that you could really live. It's a tough process, but it'll give you power to do it. It's a difficult decision, but he'll give you the strength to do it. He created you with a design, so live out that design. He died so that you could live, accept what he did on the cross, see how much value you hold, see how much love he has for you, and submit yourself and say, you know what, God, I will die to myself. I will pick up my cross every day, and I will live for you. That's what the call is. And I believe that we have a generation who wants to be a part of something that isn't just kind of doing whatever, but wants to make a difference. You want to be a part of the great adventure. You want to be a part of something that engages you, that calls you to something greater than yourself. And I believe that in this room there are 6 through 25-year-olds who are willing to say, enough living for myself. I'm going to live for the kingdom. I'm going to die to myself so that I can live for Jesus. Is anybody with me here tonight? It doesn't make sense. You don't have to earn it, and you don't deserve it. But my type of king, if you just get around Jesus, you'll be set free. Even when they're sacrificing him, you could be a robber, you could be the worst sinner in this room, and he will say, go free. You could be dying on a cross next to him, but if you acknowledge that he is king, he says, today you will be with me in my kingdom. It doesn't matter the depth of your sin. In comparison to the infinitude of his grace, it's got nothing on my God. So everybody stand to your feet. Here's the call tonight. My king has asked me to ask you if you would be willing to die to yourself. Maybe you've been following Jesus for a long time, but you've never really died to yourself fully. And you've allowed a little bit of sin, but you're like, man, look at the way God thinks of sin. He literally crawled on a cross and died so that I could live. I shouldn't allow sin in my life. And if you've been following Jesus for a long time, but you haven't actually denied yourself fully, you're not praying that prayer every day when you wake up, how can I deny myself and live for you? Tonight is your night to say, God, I fully surrender. His grace was enough for you up until this point, but this is the moment that you've got to decide, am I all in for Jesus, or am I still wanting myself to be on the throne of my heart? Maybe you're in this room and you've never actually called Jesus your God. You thought he was a good man. You thought he was a good teacher. You like the people that like Jesus, but you yourself have never actually knelt before him, not in mockery, but in submission and saying, you are my God. Thank you for dying so I didn't have to pay the penalty of death, but so that I might live. When he resurrects, we'll talk about that on Sunday. Please come on Sunday so you can hear about what it means to live for him in that power and that resurrection power. But tonight you're just saying to yourself, I want to follow this guy as God. I want to die to myself, and I want to live for Jesus. Every head bowed, every eye closed, because I want this moment to be me, you, God, and some of the adult leaders in this room. I want you to have the space to make a decision. I want you right now to even be asking yourself, do I treat him as God? Do I die to myself every day? There's a cross and a throne in my heart. Which one am I picking up in the morning? Am I picking up the throne, or am I picking up the heart? Or am I picking up the cross? If If you're in this room tonight and you're like, I just genuinely have never, ever given my life over to Jesus, but I know I need saved from my sin. I want to die to myself spiritually, and I want to live for Jesus. I want to put him on the throne of my heart. I want to follow him. I need salvation from my sin, and this Jesus died on a cross for me. His love is so great for me. As I'm saying these words, it's building as a fire in your bones because the Holy Spirit is knocking on the door of your heart saying, come home, son. Come home, daughter. You don't have to live in addiction. You don't have to live in pain. You get to live in freedom. You get to live in joy. If that's you tonight, would you be so brave and be like, oh, that's me. I need it. Raise your hand right now if that's you. If that's you in this room, you're like, I need it. I need salvation. Incredible. Multiple hands. Yes, let's celebrate because we have something to celebrate. I've been there. I was in that moment. We got something to celebrate. And then also, if you're in this room tonight, you've been following Jesus, but you keep picking up that throne every day. And today you're like, this is the moment I choose to pick up my cross every day. I've been following him as God, but today I'm making that decision to fully follow him. And I'm going to make the decision every morning to pick up my cross and not pick up my throne of my heart. If that's you, would you be so brave to raise your hand and say, tonight I see his love and I surrender fully? Is there anybody like that in the room? Amen. Incredible. Here's what we're going to do. There's this song called Reckless Love. As we sing it, I want you to see what the reckless love of God looks like. And if you raised your hand for any reason, or even you didn't raise your hand, but you want prayer, we have adult leaders all across the back of the room. Sneak out, get back there, and get some prayer. Because they all have surrendered their life to Jesus. I know it. And they would love to pray for you. They would love to help you take that next step. But please, if you can, nobody leave the room. This is going to be a very intimate, special moment to where we sing about the reckless love of God and we see with our eyes a recreation of what his reckless love looks like. If you want prayer, please find a leader in the back of the room. You guys know I'm not done yet, right? I'm going to say one thing. I just want to make it super clear. There's this thing called justification, which is like justice kind of in that moment, like where Jesus paid it all and you are now a follower of Jesus. You are, by grace, through faith, you are saved eternally, forever. Nothing can take that away from you. It's called justification. The moment that God saves you, that's it. You're good. You're bought for eternity. It's amazing. But there's also this other word called sanctification, which means every single day I've got to be in a process of dying to myself. And so tonight there were many hands raised for that justification moment where you denied yourself and you say, Jesus is my God. That moment, this is the day that this is your spiritual birthday. And we had many people raise their hands. Can we celebrate that spiritual birthday for so many people in this room? We will get to see each other forever and living fully for him. But the reality is, tomorrow, when there's not as much emotion as there is right now, you've got to wake up and say, now this is a process. Sanctification kicks in, and you got to say, all right, how can I die to myself today? I am bought, I am saved, I am forgiven, but I got to learn what it means to live for him. What's this new way of living look like? How do I do this? And that's what this family is for, this PYA family and this 412 family. We need each other to stir one another up to love and good works. It's a process of dying every day, waking up and saying, nope, I'm not choosing the throne, I'm choosing the cross for your heart. And so I hope that when there's not the emotion and when there's not the lights, tomorrow morning in your room, you choose to say, God, I pick up my cross and I follow you. Anybody with me tomorrow morning? I'm going. I'm ready.